All right. All right. Chapter 7: Railroad Bridge Safety Assurance. Integrity. The integrity of railroad track and the supporting structures is vital safety though of our nation's railroad. Their trackers are carried up more than 100,000 bridges with an average of over the bridge over every 1.4 miles of track. The bridges must be capable of supporting themselves and trains that move over them without risking the lives of the people of other train or on the trains nearby. The safety of the railroad bridges is addressed not by regulation by the state agency policy published by the Appendix E of the Track Safety Standards, the FRA Bridge Safety. The currents of the program implemented the policy fulfillment with the FRA obligation to protect the public with the unnecessary risks that could arise from the deficiency of the railroad bridges. The objective of this program is to ensure the railroad bridges retain their structural integrity, does not suffer catastrophic failure. This is failure cause the human casualty, train accidents, and environmental damage. The FRA methods. FRA addresses the railroad bridge issue at several levels. The first, FRA maintains current information of the bridge management practice of the national railroad. So that most of the information obtained by the FRA field personnel through the regular contacts with the railroad personnel who manage and inspect, maintain bridges. Secondly, the FRA track inspection have regular opportunities to serve the railroad bridges during the course of the regular track inspection. A track irregularity on the bridge often indicates the developing structural problem. The bridge should be addressed with the bridge owner or than the bridge condition may be found in that all can call for the corrective action. Thirdly, the FRA track inspectors encounter the bridges in course of the investigation of complaints of the accidents. In these cases, the inspectors and sometimes required to be quick in the assessment of them series of the conditions alive with the compliant with the or the possibility involvement with the bridge condition of accident causes. These three topics address the further details in these instructions. Responsibility. The primary responsibility of the FRA Bridge Safety Assurance Program rests on the bridge engineering, the Office of Safety Assurance, the compliance of the track specialists in which each region with administrator with that program in the region. The field worker will be conducted primarily with the field safety track safety inspector in each region who have received the training fundamental to railroad bridge inspection. Signal train control personnel will assist signal issues related to the movable bridges. See procedures for Class 1 railroads, major regional passenger railroads. For FRA regional responsibility assigned by the in regard to the railroads, some of the railroads will be evaluated the regions and whether which are their assigned principal regional inspectors are located with each of the regional track specialists should request the principal regional inspectors to nominate with the small railroads brigade evaluation each of the advisory of the safety of a current assurance of the compliance with the regional administrator of the nominees. Each region shall nominate at least for some small railroads of each of the evaluation. Factors in nomination should include any particular concern with the development around with the railroad bridge management practices. The nomination should otherwise present cross-section small railroad population in the region should be demonstrated with the anticipated work with the principal region inspector with the track inspector will be conducting with the bridge observations. Elements, information. The public as assembly with customer, passenger, or neighbor of the railroads. They have a limited legitimate interest in the safety of railroad bridges. The FRA represents the public interest, has the duty to see that the railroad industry fulfills its safety obligations, which at the same time assuring the public perception does not cause impractical, unwise policy actions related to the railroad bridges. Maintain the public record of the manner in which railroad bridges are managed, and maintain the FRA can serve both the public and the railroad industry in promoting the effective, sensitive bridge management procedures. Particular elements of the information to be obtained and kept in current meets the railroad bridge management program. The description, the railroad structural inspection policy, including the prescribed frequency inspection for the various classes of the structure, the assignment of the qualification of the inspector, the manners in which the inventory of the structure bridge list is compiled with the level of detail and policy of the updated. The type of the reports prepared on various levels of inspection, the utilization of automatic data processing for inspection and inventory information, the process distribution review and evaluation of inspection reports, the manner in which the responsibility is assigned with the decision after affecting the integrity of the structure, inspection, evaluation, rating, repairs, and modification. In most cases, the policy will be writing will be in writing, and the railroad will be able to furnish the copy. It should be described in the inspector's own words. The implementation of policy to address the following critical elements of the information timelines of the inspection reporting. Are the inspection made in the report with the prescribed frequency? Does the system exist with assure all bridge of the inventory are inspected? Are the reports available to prescribed level? The review of the responsible time after the inspection. The content of the inspection reports. Are the reports comprehensive and sufficient detail included with the support adequate review, the evaluation of the higher levels? higher levels. Are the report procedures consistent over the entire railroad? Are the reports proceeding to maintain to successfully report such as nominal progression of the conditions? The process of evaluation and the inspection reports an exemption for the note provided given with the priority attention merited by their description. Is a record maintained with the disposition of following up the exemption? The proper procedure with the bridges are protected from overstress. The criteria procedure with which grades are selected with the re-rating with the rating procedure and criteria the REMA is recommended practice as an alternative. Is rating conducted by the safety staff engineers or consultant? How many bridges have been re-rated recently, 5 years or more or less? How are loads operating restrictions replaced? Evaluation procedures general. The procedure for the bridge evaluation will be according to the size of the railroad. Working class 1 railroad major passenger carrier will be performed on generally continuous basis with activities conducted at the time and location is appropriate. The FRA should maintain current information on the bridge management practices of each of the large railroads. The track specialist and inspectors should be performed earlier with the practices of each large railroad in the territories to permit the efficiency prompt resolution of any questions problems that they may arise. This information should be updated with the changes that occur at least annually. Bridge management evaluation smaller railroads will be conducted on a periodic basis consistent with available the FRA resource indication possible problems, opportunities to assist the railroad of the bridge related safety issues. The evaluation of activity on the regional railroads should be consistent with the relatively size of the railroad, ranging between the level of activity of class 1 and larger short lines. Because the program is essentially continuous, exit intervals with the railroad in final reports of the investigation will not be required. However, after an office of evaluation, a memo report shall be submitted through the channels of the track division showing the findings. Particularly the issue listed above the memo should be offered to the railroad for a review. The particular is sent forward. The inspector should find the extraordinary conditions that would not be appropriate shared with the railroad official at the time. They should be immediately reported to the separate documentation through the regional administration of the track to the track division. Inspectors working on subsequent field investigations should also have copies of the current system reports of the railroad for that railroad. They can evaluate the level to which the railroad programs is implemented in the field. It's extremely important that any of the question aspects of the railroad bridge program or any structural deficiency be reported to the railroad immediately. The FRA should not retain information about questionable condition of which the railroad is unaware of. Because there is not an enforcement program, the FRA may share all the information about the railroad bridges, the bridge program with the railroad, even to the providing draft copies of the memo reports to the railroads for the review before resubmission. If there appears potential problems that might not be resolved from the cooperative efforts, the specialist should not notify the bridge engineer immediately so that any of the information that might be necessary for legal action can be obtained and safeguarded. All right, planning and preparation of program evaluation. Preparation of field investigation should be made during the headquarters work, depending on the size of the railroad and the location of the final repository of the most inspection records. It may be necessary to visit the several division headquarters to review the detailed records to be kept there. If they are not all forwarded to the system headquarters, this should be determined early in the investigation on the railroads in which much field work will be conducted on other inspectors. A good informal periodic review will be necessary in order to pass guidance to the others during the headquarters phase. The inspector will prepare the recommendation of the division that should be visited by himself and the other inspectors involved in the investigation. The railroad headquarters personally should be asked for the contact people on each division. While working at the system, the division headquarters, all inspectors should be looking for the bridges that should be selected as the objects of the field portion of the investigation. The information can be obtained from the inspection reports by asking the railroad officials. In requesting the information, the inspector should be examined. The purpose of the investigation is not to determine the problem bridges exist. There's no question that they do. They are not inherently unsafe. The purpose of is to document just how the railroad handles the problem bridges to ensure safety, such as throughout increased inspection, derating, and temporary reinforcement. Observation of bridges. The term observation is used instead of the inspection because the FRA is not planning to actually inspect the bridge during the investigation. Any bridge that carries out its implied responsibility to the adequacy of the finding of the inspection. The responsibility remains on the bridge owner and the level of the detail required for the full responsibility beyond the scope of the investigation. The FRA inspector will observe the railroad inspector. Engineer will perform the full partial inspector in accordance with the requirements of the railroad. In conducting bridge observation, the inspector must also keep in mind of the difference between the potential hazards and any condition that merely cosmetics indicate the need for the maintenance. As far as an individual bridge is concerned, the FRA primarily concerned with the ability of today's bridges to carry today's loads without a risk. The lack of complaint, for instance, is not serious for the FRA, even though it might lead to some loss of section of critical members of a few years hence. whether the railroad chooses to deal with the problem now with the delaying or later most costly repairs an economic issue, not a safe problem. On a program level, however, the inspector should report the evidence of the railroad permitting overall deterioration of its bridges to the point of the critical condition that could shortly overwhelm its ability to inspect the product and correct themselves. Level of observation. Bridge observation will be conducted as essentially 3 levels: routine, special, and incidental. Routine observation will consist of an accompanying of the railroad bridge inspector, the supervisor during routine scheduled inspections over the railroad. Special observation will include observation structures selected by the railroad or the FRA inspector, or the observation special inspector and conducted by the railroad, such as steel rating. The damage assessment and incidental observations will occur during the normal course of a track inspector's regular work, including track inspection, complaint, and accident investigations. Routine bridge observation. On most of the railroad bridges that are inspected regularly at intervals, either design inspectors or local supervisors of the bridge and structure, the FRA inspector should make opportunities to accompany those inspectors on an occasional routine inspection to determine these types of information obtained by the railroad from the installation, whether they're not in the inspection are being performed in accordance with the railroad stated policy, whether or not the inspection reflects the true condition of the structure. Local inspectors typically cover the smaller bridges on a fairly long line of railroad, and one day they might return to spend more time possible for some assistance on the large or more demanding structure. There are a number of the bridges covered with one day is indicating neither quality nor quantity of work accomplished, either for the railroad personnel or the FRA inspector. The facts should be considered with all concerning during the course of the investigation. Special bridge operations. Special inspections are typically made by the railroad as required by the circumstances when on the bridge is damaged, with a routine inspection reveals the potential critical exception or requirement for the re-rating. When a bridge is the program for the major reports of FRA should be arranged with the railroad officials to observe special inspection for the opportunity to inspect particular interest with the rating of the steel. Inspection would typically be performed with the specialists with the large railroads and which often go to the great detail. Also, interest will be major brigade repair upgrading projects might be afforded unusual opportunities to observe structural details that are otherwise obscured. Even painting or redecking will allow observation for the bare steel. The top flanges of the girders, stringers are normally covered by deck ties. Incidental bridge observation. Track inspectors may have the opportunity to observe railroad bridges during the course of their work. During the regular track inspection, they normally pass over at least one bridge to the 1 or 2 miles tracks. If the track or near the bridge shows any indication of the problem, even if the compliance with the track safety standards, it might be an indication of a problem with the bridge or the problem that could be affected the bridge. The issue is or addressed by the FRA training with the course. The fundamental bridges are to the detail to be included herein. Inspectors should not hesitate to check out tight gauge, slew ties, lobe approaches, alignment, cross level, or profile conditions of the bridge on a bridge. Check for the bridge conditions on these. The cause of the condition could be aggravated by it. Several instances have been occurred where the FRA or state inspectors have prevented a serious bridge problem by first detecting a deviation in the track on the bridge. Inspectors will occasionally investigate the accident complaints involving the bridge. In these cases, the photographs are invaluable, especially if they're taken immediately following an accident involving a bridge. Whether or not bridge failed, information concerning the bridge should be provided with the FRA bridge engineering with the accident report. The railroads will generally assist in providing information including site inspection reports and drawings, descriptions of the bridge. Alright, procedure for a Class 1 railroad and major regional passenger railroads. The regional track specialist should contact the principal bridge engineer of each of the major railroad at least once each year and arrange the review of the railroad current bridge management policy. The initial contact will usually be at the railroad operating headquarters, followed by the telephone and mail personnel contacts as necessary from the year to year. The initial contact for most of the large railroads were per the Bridge Safety Survey in 1992-1993. When a railroad undergoes a significant change in its configuration as thorough mergers of major acquisition, this informs you should be updated. The purpose of this contact of these railroads is to maintain the current information as whether the railroad is following the FRA guidelines for the railroad bridge safety, whether the guidelines are adequate, proper to accomplishment, the objective to assist the railroad when unbiased outside observation of the bridge management practices. During the course of the contacts, the inspector specialists will have the opportunity to observe work in the inspection on the various types of bridges, as well as the reviewing of the documents in many different formats. These experiences will enhance each individual knowledge of the railroad bridge and management practices. Office work in large railroads. The objective of the office portion of the investigation is to determine how the railroad assured through the clear assignment of the responsibility of a competent person the bridges its own are safe to carry the loads that are operated over them. Inspectors should evaluate all over the findings in the light of this particular question. The objective is central to each program that should be explained by the railroad personnel at every railroad opportunity. It places all the details on the program in the proper context. Field investigation of large railroads. Alright, the objective of the field investigation is to support, verify, the review, and information gathered by the Office of Investigation. The field investigation should provide the examples of the physical evidence that the railroad structural management program either does or does not provide the necessary assurance of the safety, finding that the field investigation should be prepared so that they relate to as closely as possible to issue the raise or stress the interim report of the Office of Investigation. The field investigation over large railroads will often involve several inspectors and some from several regions. In these cases, the high-level planning and coordination among FRA personnel will be required to effective accomplishment of the work. Significant findings during the field investigation should be reported immediately to the regional specialists coordinating activities on the railroad so that they may be relayed to the other inspectors on some railroad and the FRA bridge and engineer. Conducting of the investigation of smaller railroads. Some small principles apply to smaller railroads and are outlined above. The level of coordination among the inspector different regions may normally be less than according to the relative size of the railroad. The initial contact should normally be made by the principal regional inspector should be assigned to the railroad, either the regional specialist or the assigned inspector. Inspectors applying to the large railroads must be reduced in scale to apply to their smaller railroads. The primary objective of the investigation remaining to determine whether or not the structural integrity of the railroad bridges constitute a safety problem that should be addressed by the FRA to determine how the railroad assures through a clear assignment the responsibility of competent persons that the bridge is its own are safe to carry the loads that are operated over them and to verify the policy of their field observation. If a small railroad has consulting engaged to inspect the rate of the bridges, the inspector must be careful the railroad incurs not consulting and expense of the support of the FRA requests for information. That must be recognized that the bridge management program on a smaller railroad could be much less than formal than a larger railroad, but still be effective. Inspectors should expect that some of the small railroads might have a bridge program that are very rudimentary, if any at all. These situations require a high degree of judgment by the inspector in order to set the priorities, provide good advice to these of that. Railroads, the nature of the bridge involved, the density, weights of the traffic handled, and should be considered. The purpose of the FRA program is to prevent human casualty, society damage, skeletal damage due to the bridge failures. The object should be always considered in dealing with these situations. They could be called to the attention of the bridge engineer as soon as possible so that the appropriate level of evaluation can be performed to substantiate any necessary action of the FRA to bring about resolution of these problem areas. Reporting the observation. Reporting of structures observed must be included in the information called with the attached reporting with the example form as applicable to each structure type of the inspection being performed. Additional remarks and photographs should be added to convey the true picture of the condition of the structure, or at least to the extent of that can be determined from the level of observation made. Any concern with the inspector over the condition of the structural, any details should be discussed with the railroad representative. The concern of response should be recorded with the report for the structure. Copy of the railroad inspector's report is furnished and should be attached. A copy should be requested, but is not required. Several photographs should be made with the bridge inspection observed, with particular attention should be made to the captions been indicated with the details shown in the precise location on the structure. Other information that conveyed in the photograph captions of the photographs showing the entire structure of large portions should be indicated with the location of the photographer. The direction in which the camera is pointing. The camera should be held at either level or plumb about 8 axis of lanes, and for the photograph can be taken straight up, down, or the top of the camera should be either perpendicular or parallel to the center line of the structure. Reporting format. The bridge observation should be reported on the regular FRA safety inspection for using the type of the code MSB. Each of the bridge included with the report should have its own line number. The brief description, in addition with the standard format, has been prepared for the reporting of the bridge specific information to the track division of the FRA headquarters. These format adaptable several computer applications. Hard copy is attached to these instructions reflecting the state of the development at this time. The changes might be made in the future, so the inspector should look at the last revision to be sent to Viva Electronics means. It is preferred that format be completed in the computer, transmitted electronically to the bridge engineering at the headquarters. Potentially hazardous bridge condition. If the FRA inspector detects a potentially hazardous condition on the bridge, it is vital the responsible railroad employee to be notified immediately. If the inspector is accompanied by the railroad responsibility representative in a capacity, that the person should be advised of the necessity to the railroad to protect the railroad traffic or other unaffected persons or operation from the consequence of the hazard. If the inspector is unaccompanied, then every attempt should be made to contact the railroad by telephone. If unable to accomplish the notification, then the inspector should be contacted the regional track specialist of the track division at the headquarters. Relay the message regarding this time of day which the bridge hazard is detected. The inspector of the regional track specialist should notify the bridge engineer or the bridge specialist of the track division circumstance. The first priority is to notify the railroad to enable them to protect the train operation. Once the initial notifications are completed, the inspector should record the nature of the problem, and the photographs written with record of the observation. Digital cameras should be used, if available, so the photographs can be transmitted directly to the track division to the railroad as necessary. The inspector should be documenting the response of the railroad and report the track specialist to the bridge engineer as soon as it becomes known. If the railroad responsive is inadequate, the determined the bridge engineer and authorized person of the track division Federal Railroad Administration is authorized to issue an emergency order to either remove the bridge from the service or other place to the appropriate restriction of the train operation. Issue the emergency order requires a determination that continued operation presents real danger to the person, property, of the environment. The FRA can also enter into the compliance agreement with the railroad, which generally queries the term of the emergency order, but stops short of removing the facility from the service. The compliance agreement is also issued, but the bridge condition can be converted into emergency order by the FRA unilaterally if the railroad should have substantially violated its terms. In the instance in which the FRA has issued the emergency orders on the bridge engineer has determined the measurement calculations of the bridge and was imminent damage of the failure on the underload. The emergency order were issued by the administrator requiring the train not to operate over the subject bridge until they may have been repaired, then evaluated by the competent engineer and found safe operation. The operation requires the bridge owner to provide with the engineering calculation the FRA for the review before the order was lifted. It was required for the engineers to component owner in the field of railroad bridge of the engineer be appropriately licensed to the particular engineer in the subject state that the calculations submitted by the FRA bear with the engineer's proposed embossed seal. Every emergency order situation is different and not possible with the issue detailed instruction. They will verify every case whenever the bridge condition arises. The close coordination among the regional staff. The FRA bridge personnel is in the headquarters essential to bring it about proper resolution. The two emergency orders, one compliance agreement with the issue with the FRA to address the bridge safety issue, and are included. For example, noted the relief was granted to the Oregon Pacific Railroad once the bridge has been repaired, but Tonawanda Island Railroad never resumed operations. Our example of emergency order compliance agreements related to the bridge would be the Federal Register, Volume 61, Number 33, the Department of Transportation. This is Towanda and Authority background. Here's another example. I don't feel like reading the examples, but another one. This is a notice of relief summary. Alright, safety compliance agreement between Columbus and Railway articles. Scope of compliance agreement, action of undertaking Columbus and Greenville. Certain action the FRA may take to ensure compliance. Violation agreement, mutual representation, notification, effective FRA personnel, effective date of duration agreement. Statement of agent's policy of the safety of the railroad bridges following the federal notice of the current policy safety standards. Summer agency Federal Railroad Administration final statement of agency policy. The FRA is issuing the final statement of the policy safety of railroad bridges. The FRA establishes suggested criteria for the railroad to ensure the structural integrity of bridges that carry the railroad track. The final statement policy reflects the minor changes of the following public content with the interim statement of the policy published April 27, 1995. Title 60 Federal Register 20654. And there's more examples. I just don't feel like reading law cases right now. All right, this is a list of subjects to Title 49, Part 213, Penalties, Railroad Safety Rules. Amendment Part 213 reads as follows. Part 213 Track Safety Standards Authority Citation Part 213 revised to read as follows. The Title U.S. Standard Code 20102, 20114, 142, Title U.S. Standard Code 2461, Title 49 CFR 14999M, Appendix C, Part Statement Agent Policy of Safety Railroad Bridges. I'll tell you what, I'll read that some other time in a different one. A Federal Railroad Administration Office of Safety Bridge Observation and reports the Railroad Code, Railroad Name, name, subdivision, bridge number, section, number, sections, FRA, U.S. Coast Guard, water bridge, key number, river, mile, crossing, over and under track, city, state, railroad, milepost, geographical coordination, latitude, north, longitude, west, type of structure, substructure, deck, principal materials, walkways, right, left, centered, number of spans, total lengths, long spans, dates, 7, major original condition, manager modification, number of track, now, originally, maximum authorized train speed, freight, and passenger load limit, loads permitted in the timetable bulletin, other loads on speed restriction, inspected times per owners and others, dated latest per previous inspection, comments, exemptions, notes, and specific use additional in the pages and necessary attachments, railroad, a copy of the received associated inspection report, FRA inspectors. This is the formatted electronic report, Federal Railroad Administration feeling. Appendix 1.